ever feel like you're standing at a crossroads in life? You know, there's so many directions that you can move towards. Well, it's pretty common knowledge within the semen retention community that, you know, semen retention is basically, it's the oil that keeps the gears and all the cogs and the mechanics of your inner compass working and, you know, moving effortlessly, seamlessly. Like, when I think about being on semen retention and how many kind of different kind of changes have occurred over the last 2.5 years of me doing this practice. That's not a streak, by the way. The longest streak I had was 15 months. And I'm currently on a new streak under a month. So what happened was, we have these plots, we have these narratives, we have these kind of stories that we tell ourselves in our lives. Sometimes they can be self-limiting. Sometimes it can be something like, oh, you know what? I don't need to be anyone great. I can just be this guy that gets a minimum wage and works for someone else, and it doesn't really like my work, and my health's not really good, and I don't feel like I'm creatively expressing myself, but it's alright. At least I've got my couple of friends that are in the same position as me. Well, for me, I was kind of like in that position before semen retention. I was hanging around some people very similar to me, a little bit older than me. I was the youngest out of our group, but they were doing all right. They weren't unemployed or anything, but it just got to a point where I realized these people weren't striving for something different. They didn't have a kind of connection to source. They didn't have a kind of intuition or a bigger vision. They never really cared about taking their art or, music, because I'm a musician. They didn't care about taking that to the next level. And then I realized I was kind of just living in someone else's dream. I was kind of just putting on clothes and a costume of a character that was only beneficial for them, not for me. And it doesn't come from a place of selfishness to want the best for yourself. It comes from a place of pure authenticity. So what happened was, when I started practicing semen retention and I started to see the lust, and I started to see how it impacted, every single element of my life, that's when the gears started to shift. That's when big changes started to occur. Here's a pond. This is an unlock on my map. I've never been here before, so I've just unlocked this area. Maybe we can do some more semen retention videos here. But that goes back to my point of this video. Let the plot find you. When I went out on this walk, I didn't think to myself, oh, you're going to find that pond. Nah. It found me. Let the plot find you. Imagine if you had this narrator, saying to you, okay, you're going to get up to work today. You're going to have a shot of coffee, go to work, do your work, come home, have some frozen food, chuck it in the oven, eat that, crack open a beer, have a few beers, have your frozen food dinner for dinner, and watch some TV, go to bed, jack off, and then, in 3 days, repeat the same cycle, and then your girlfriend's going to come over on Saturday and you can finally, ejaculate 8 times. And then wither away, and then on Monday you feel like absolute kind of trash, and you bring your bad mood to everyone else, and that's the narrative. You're just like, imagine if someone was talking into your ear and saying, and now he's going to go onto the hub, and if you do this for the next hour, and now he's going to be with his girlfriend and do this for 3 hours, and now they're just going to sit in front of the TV and watch this, blah blah blah. It's like, if people actually were narrating our lives out loud, we would probably feel a bit more shame and guilt, and probably wouldn't do the things that we actually did. And that's why on semen retention, you gain a bit more clarity of your actions. You gain a bit of, a bit more responsibility, accountability for, what you are doing. Whereas when you're not on it, you just say to yourself, well, everyone else does it. Yeah, but imagine if everyone else could see what you were doing. It doesn't matter if everyone else does it. If everyone else could see what you're doing, I'm sure you'd have second thoughts about some of these dirty things that you've done. So eventually you write down things, like you journal. I got into a thing called The Artist's Way, and it's pretty simple concept, to be honest. It's just journaling. There's nothing special about that book, to be honest. It's a bit overhyped, in my opinion. It's good for what it is. The thing is that, like, the whole awakening and conscious expansion kind of journey, it's a lot of the time, it's like you get to this kind of, it's like karate belts. It's like you're on white belt, and then, you get onto yellow belt, and then you realize that the exercises that you do on white belt aren't really that good, and you need to do tougher exercises. It's like the same with your consciousness awakening. It's like you might get a book and you think it's the best thing in the world, like when I first read Power of Now. It's actually a good book, but it's still only like elementary in comparison to, a lot of other things. But I digress. So the point is that when I was reading this book, The Artist's Way, it was encouraging you to kind of do morning pages, which is basically just journaling. Allocating some time to journal. And a lot of the time, when you're in that kind of achiever state mindset where you want to achieve things in life, and it's a very like 3D matrix kind of higher level archetype, the achiever. That's very much like the kind of person that writes lists and they follow strict routines and times and stuff like that. You can journal every single day, but then sometimes you're just going to be like writing the same plot over and over again. Like, have you ever had a friend that's kind of talked about something and they keep bringing up this one thing that like you just don't want to hear again and again and again? It's like you're just like, all right, man, I get it. Like, you don't need to say it for like the 70th time. That's kind of like what you do when you're mindlessly journaling. Like, if you journaled out of a place of like, my brain is feeling too energetic, which will definitely happen when you're on semen retention, you probably have a better experience, because then you're transmuting all that kind of overdriven energy inside your consciousness and you're transmuting it onto the page and the paper. I mean, You could do it on your guitar, you could do it on a drawing, you could do it in your cooking, whatever, your gardening, whatever. Something creative. And then it's out of you. But if you're putting a piece of paper in front of yourself every single day, saying you have to write for 30 minutes because the book said, it's not going to be as effective. And that goes back to the lazy lion method. It's like sometimes you just need to don't care, Like sometimes you just need to have no routine and just be like, I'll wake up when, when I smell something is in the air. Otherwise, if everything's kind of the same, I may as well just preserve my energy. What's the point in, going on overdrive and sprinting around? So that's kind of my mind at the moment, is letting the plot find me. Maybe I lost the plot, trying to find the plot. Have a think about that. Have you ever lost the plot trying to find the plot? I think I have. I think, the whole conscious journey and the awakening journey and being on semen retention, it's like you're trying to focus on benefits and outcomes and all this kind of stuff, to the point where you have no focus because you're focusing on too many things. You can't focus on multiple things at once. There's this very simple term, and I like it. It's called single tasking. Single tasking is exactly what you think it is. It's the opposite to multitasking. It's just doing one thing. Just do one thing, bro. You don't have to, if you're a musician, just focus on learning the guitar part of the song. And get that to a good level that you are happy with. And then focus on just the vocals to that song. Or if you're a songwriter, focus on writing some sort of lyrical story. Make it feel like it's got a feeling to a story about it. Rather than thinking about, I gotta put down the drum track and the bass guitar track for it now before the song's even finished. I used to do that. I used to go from all angles. I used to have a song idea that was about, 20 minutes old. so super fresh. And then I'd jump in on the computer and go put on some drums and bass, and it was always spending 30 minutes on each part and trying to find specific sounds and just wasting a lot of time because my attention was scattered. And I guess, you might say, that's probably ADHD or something like that, and there's probably some element of truth to that. I think most artists have some sort of neurotypical kind of thing going on, but who cares? I think they're just more labels that we can chuck on ourselves. So yeah, I think just really refining that focus in the present. If you're saying, if your plot is getting too predictable, and not in a good sense, because there's positivity within predictability. Knowing that the sun is going to rise in the morning, that's a positive thing. Knowing that if you are consistent on your work, it will lead to better outcomes, that's a positive thing. But maybe eating the same food, you know, walking the same route, watching the same YouTubers all the time. Even semen retention, guys, let's be honest. Do any of you guys get like semen retention fatigue from like the content? Like, do you sometimes feel like what's put out there is just like, we've heard it all? So I think what I'm trying to do with my current channel is trying to expand the ideas within the semen retention realm, and eventually, maybe when I get to about 1,000 subs or whatever, I might just kind of stop posting about semen retention as like a main topic and make it more of a, you know, part of the lineup of plenty of other topics. Do I want the golf ball? No, I don't want the golf ball. Which is kind of goes back to the point about, like, you know, letting the plot find you. I think it got to a point on my 15-month streak, probably around the 14-month mark, when I was like really overloaded with energy. I was forcing myself to make these videos, and I was also trying to dabble with dating and forcing an outcome with women, because in my head I was like, oh, it's been 15 months and, you know, had a really good experience with one girl at the 10-month mark, but after that 10-month mark, that was when it all went downhill, because I had a really positive experience with someone, but then I wanted to have it again and again, you know what I mean? It was like this kind of dopamine rush, and I think knowing now that it's like, you know, and I've heard some other kind of gurus on YouTube talk about this, it's like sometimes the best kind of love moments you can have in your life are things that don't even last 24 hours, you know? I felt more with her for the 18 hours that we were together than, you know, than some of these girls that I've been on like multiple dates with and all this kind of stuff, and, you know, even some relationships, but it's a different story. Anyway, that's why you shouldn't be so outcome focused. That's why you shouldn't obsess about where it is you're going. Remember, the plot will find you on semen retention. Catch you later, guys. Like, comment, subscribe if you like this video, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.